Hello, friends. Welcome to a new episode of the movie Hotel Transylvania 2. Things have changed a lot. The beautiful vampires Mavis and Jonathan have married in the hotel, which is no longer just for monsters, and welcomes their first guests, humans, the groom's family, and they had a son named Dennis, Dracula's beloved grandson. Everything seems to be getting better at the Hotel Transylvania. The rigid rule set by Dracula of monster only has been suppressed and human hosts accepted as well. What worries the Count is that his lovely grandson Dennis, half human and half vampire, doesn't give any sign of vampirism, taking advantage of Mavis' visit to his human sister-in-law. Dracula recruits his friends Frank, Murray, Wayne and Griffin to do a little Dennis going through a monster training camp. What they don't know is that Vlad, Dracula's grumpy father, is about to arrive at the hotel, and when he finds out that his little girl is not pure blood and that humans can frequent the hotel establishment, things will get complicated. After we watched Hotel Transylvania 1 today, we watched the story of the Dracula Hotel Transylvania 2. Mavis and Jonathan decided to get married and their whole family was invited. Dracula was very excited because her dear daughter was about to get married, and very nostalgic as before, and also, for her father's jealousy ruined the marriage kiss. Jonathan had already adapted to that new life with monsters, and even understood the incredible words of some of his guests. Unlike his parents, who were just starting to know those things, at the dance that Mavis had with their father, she was asking him about his black grandfather, to which Dracula replied by saying that because he is an old man, he wouldn't have liked that kind of celebration, and besides, he's not so liberal and maybe he wouldn't agree with that marriage. A year after the Mavis ceremony, he asks his father to fly with her and play like they used to, and she asked him to fly to tell him she was pregnant, and Dracula was even happier with it, and Mavis didn't care much if the baby was born human or vampire, because she would be very happy as she was. But his father didn't think the same thing. He wanted him to be born as a little vampire, just like his whole family. A few months, on the day of delivery, they wouldn't let in a Dracula because they only allowed Jonathan in. So this vampire dresses up as a nurse and was able to meet his grandson when he was born. It's been a year, and the little red-haired guy called Dennis has lived a year, and his grandparents had a little argument about whether Dennis is human or vampire. Dennis didn't have his fangs, but they tell him vampires can develop it until age 5, and we also see that the entire hotel was adapted for their protection. It's been another year and Dennis has now completed his second year of life, and also said his first word, and the Dracula was still pending.
Otra vez.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yo no digo bla bla bla.
About whether his grandson's fangs were already starting to grow later, Dracula had given Jonathan a non-existent job at the hotel, or to keep his daughter in his mansion. That hotel had already become more modern with zombies running social networks, and also now it had the door open for humans, and Dracula was a little bit hard to handle these new technologies years later. Dennis could already speak, and Dracula insisted on teaching him vampire things, so he was now willing to teach him to become a bat. But at that point, Mavis comes in and tells him it was very late, and Dennis had to sleep, because now he was attending classes with humans. But Dracula said that night was the birthday of the Wayne puppies, and that Dennis was invited. Mavis didn't want me to go arguing that Dennis is different, and that the other monster kids' games were too harsh for him, and so on. Dennis teaches his grandfather the videos of pastry he used to watch, and said monsters always shared Dracula. He was very offended with that material, saying that those things are not real monsters. to what Maddis tells her that Dennis is about to turn 5 and that he shouldn't force him to do what he might not be doing. Later, on the birthday of 6 of the Wayne Mavis puppies, he reconsidered his father's words and let Dennis attend that party, accepting that maybe she was too overprotective, and Winnis felt super happy to see Dennis there. Mavis, who still kept her spirit as a child, was excited to see the games and the piazza they had put on the place, and very excited to break it. But that piazza contained sweets, and that made the countless wonder children get out of control and take enough energy off, causing Dennis to fall and have a Dracula tooth drop. He was happy because he had the fangs coming, but Mavis tries to make him understand that Dennis is human and to be in touch with more of them, and the more secure they would move to California. And Maddis again emphasized to Dracula that she can't force Dennis to be someone who isn't. In the morning, when Dracula was getting ready to sleep, he talks to his friend Frank about his daughter's plans to move and tells her Denise is only suffering from dental delays and everything because of the hotel humanities and human interaction at school. And then Frank gives him the idea that he's doing monstrous activities with his grandson and Dracula, and he accepts that maybe then his fangs would start growing. And then Frank gives him the idea that he's doing monstrous activities with his grandson and Dracula, and he accepts that maybe then his fangs would start growing. So now he's going to find his son-in-law, and this one confesses he doesn't want to move because he's taken a liking to the place, and Dracula uses that to get together to build a plan. Then, on the pretext that they're going to California to see if it's the best place to raise their son, Dracula has allied with Jonathan, has Mavis leave Dennis for a week until they return. A moment after, they went to Dracula with their friends, and her new companion named Blakey were ready to start their monstrous adventure en route to California. Mavis was trying to communicate with his father to see how his son was doing, but Jonathan knew what Dracula was doing, makes excuses not to do it to that group of monsters, that I intended to visit a scary forest they were going to when they were young. But when they arrived, they realized that it had been completely remodeled. But when I tried to do it, they don't get scared because they recognize it, and they even ask for a picture. And when Jonathan tried to scare it, it's just taken as a lovely creature. Now, the next one to show his skills would be Wayne. That wolf who said he was rusty had a mission to hunt down a cute deer, and in trying to do it, he was very much noticed by his lack of practice. And at that moment he sees a frisbee come running after him, arguing with a dog, where Wayne would go out as a winner. Dracula was unhappy with all that, and when he tried violently to take the frisbee away, the little cart where he was staying in Vladivostok sprang up and flew off the road. After that unfortunate incident, the next thing to prove his skills would be Murray, who was beginning to prepare his spells so he could invoke a majestic sandstorm, but in the act breaks the column and only manages to invoke half a kilo from the other side. Jonathan and Maddis had already arrived in town, and she is surprised at the variety of things she's never seen or tasted in. When they got to a bike park, Jonathan tried to show them his great techniques and moves, but he was very lacking in practice, and his demonstration ended badly. Mavis also wanted to try and do it, and when he took the bike it was amazing and wonderfully good, and when his show ended he thought that this city would be a great place for Dennis. Grow up and decides to call his father to see how they were Dracula. When he got the call, very nervously trying to wake up Dennis, but he was asleep like a log, so they choose to just put sunglasses on him and make the invisible man imitate his Mavis voice. He started to notice something strange in his son, so Dracula uses the old trick of leaving me a signal, so that he can hang. After that, Dracula takes them to the dark summer vampire camp where he used to go as a kid. But when he gets there, he's surprised to see that that place has also been remodeled. A little later, the camp director comes along, and the Dracula tells him he wants to enroll his grandson to teach him some exercise activities like hunting the mouse. But the director says that now that exercise is called looking after the mouse so vampires can increase their confidence. Then Dracula visualizes the giant, tall tower where he learned to fly. But now that majestic tower was closed down and was replaced by a small toy house, apparently 10 centimeters tall. One of the current activities of that camp was to sing countless love songs in the fire, and all of the Dracula friends enjoyed it. Except for the Dracula, that vampire was already tired of that terrible situation. So he decides to take his grandson to the top of the tower to throw it, and with it learned to fly. The Dracula friends see how Dennis fell, and they were very worried because he wasn't flying yet and he was almost getting to the ground, so he dredged very quickly to try to reach all that in front of the director. And those brats with their cell phones, this director was trying to call the authorities for Dracula to have committed that negligence, and while discussing, the Dracula friends brought down the tower and also set fire to the entire Dennis camp. He felt sad to see everything and felt like a bad boy, but his grandfather tells him that it wasn't like that. So when they tried to leave that unsafe tower, a burning tree fell on his cart and made it disappear. Mavis, on the other hand, came to Jonathan's parents' house, and although these people had good intentions with their reception, they made her feel a little uncomfortable. Who's surprised by every new thing he sees, but Jonathan makes him understand that being like her is not bad, and at that point he gets a video to Jonathan about a kid falling off a big tower, and Mavis realizes that that kid was Dennis and decides to call his father to see what happened. Dracula answers, and he tells her very nervously that they were out of the hotel making some roast beef. But Mavis doesn't believe him and says, very angry, that he's going to the hotel and he hopes to see them there. Dracula was desperate because her carriage had been destroyed and she had no way to get to Transilvania quickly. And then the missing Blobby arrives, and everybody gets on their very resilient Maddie's transport. They're going to quickly order a plane for Transilvania, but they had to make stopovers, and all the flights were very delayed. So you decide to fly around the other side of the Dracula. Seeing that they were going too slowly makes Frank fill up the Blackie body, and so they fly out with great power towards the hotel. That adventure fascinated Dennis a lot, and now sees his grandfather as the coolest looking guy that could ever exist. And when this monstrous gang finally arrived at the Mavis Hotel, I was waiting for them very angry because I had already seen the complete remix of the video where their son fell from a big tower. Mavis was very disappointed with her father because he had put her son in danger and told him that after celebrating Dennis' birthday, they would move out. Mavis was very disappointed with her father because he had put her son in danger and told him that after celebrating Dennis' birthday, they would move out. And the Dracula gets very depressed with that decision. When Mavis packed his things, he listens to Dennis talking in his room, and when he comes in he sees him trying to fly like a bat. Mavis tells him that on his birthday his grandparents and human cousins would attend his grandparents and human cousins and then move to California. Dennis thought they were leaving the hotel just because he couldn't become a bat, and so he left his grandfather alone. But Mavis takes those ideas out of his head and tells him they'll always be in communication with Grandpa Dracula. Later at dinner, Mavis tells Dracula he invited his father to the Dennis party, arguing that he has not known his great-grandfather so far and wanted him to do so before they moved elsewhere. Vlad, the father of the Dracula, receives the invitation. And I was glad that there was already a new vampire in the family, and compared to the creature called Sale, this one wasn't worried that the party was in a hotel, because he claims to have raised his son to take away and get rid of the souls of humans, without knowing that his Dracula son now lives with them and that his maybe granddaughter married one. Dracula is planning to have her father not realize that those guests were human, and asks Jonathan to tell everyone that the Dennis party will be in monster costume. And then at the birthday party, Jonathan's family disguise themselves as zombies and Jonathan as a supposed vampire. And then he comes to talk and starts criticizing the Dracula about his shift from King of Darkness to director of a little hotel, and also asks to see his grandson. When he meets Jonathan, who now calls himself Count Dracula, he doesn't look at him with good eyes, and when he meets his grandson Dennis, without his fangs, said that maybe he had dental retardation just like Dracula. And he also said that to get his fangs out they should scare him good, making something she liked very scary, and Dracula agreed that maybe with that her fangs would come up so they could stay. Later, a human who disguised himself as a pastry monster starts doing his show, and Grandpa Vlad starts controlling it. This makes me say things that are contrary to what the cake would say and start throwing cakes at everyone while adapting a more muscular and horrifying form. Dracula, seeing her grandson was having a hard time with it, decides to contradict her father and turn the pastry into the way it used to be. Vlad tells her that if she had waited a few more minutes, he would have had his fangs off by now, and maybe gets angry at the plan to ruin Dennis' favorite character just to try to convince him to become a vampire. Jonathan tells him it was the only way to stay because Dennis wouldn't be happy in California, and that maybe only had him tied to strict diets, and he wouldn't let it be fun. And Dennis was sad to know that his family was fighting because he couldn't be a normal kid or a monster. And he leaves the hotel while he's accompanied by Winnie. And at the party, when Grandpa Blade was talking about how emotionally weak his great-granddaughter Jonathan is trying to deal with him, and in the act, he accidentally takes off his costume by making Black see that he was actually a human, and Jonathan's parents also show his identity. Blade was disappointed with all that, and Dracula tries to explain to him that monsters no longer hate humans or humans, and that his grandson Dennis is the most special and wonderful person, even if it's half human and half vampire. And if you don't want to accept it as it is, Vlad, you'd be a complete fool. Maeve is very happy to hear those warm words from her father, and they just realize Dennis is missing, so everyone gets very desperate in their search. While he's watching her stay outside the hotel, he finds Dennis and Winnie and tells them that next to her gang they're going to turn that adore a human hotel into ash. Dennis tells him he can't do that because his grandfather Dracula would get sad, and he starts making fun of him by telling him he's just a very small weakling. Winnie, very angry, bites her hand by candle, and this spear against the floor awakens in Dennis the alien inside, and her fangs start coming out, and then shows his vampire rage. Very angry, Candle throws a deafening scream that's heard by everyone, including the Candle gang. This tries to hurt Winnie, but Dennis, becoming a superhero bat, starts to face it and hit it in the face of the fascinating sight of the Dracula. But this wasn't over yet, because the beautiful gang goes far and the Dracula family gives them a show showing their skills in confronting those monsters, and not just them, but also Frankie, Wayne, who joined her 500 children at the Dennis party using her powers with complete certainty, and now was a cool character for her friends. Then those horrible monsters run away knowing they can't do anything against the invincible Dracula family. Dennis asks his grandfather that if he's now a vampire, it would be cool to what this guy says, that even if it's a unicorn, it's always going to be, and Mavis decides that they won't move anymore. Everything seemed to be over, but Beautiful still wanted to get rid of humans, and is stopped by Grandfather Black, making him a tiny pale monster, had agreed to be part of that family, even though their members are human. And then continuing with the party, everybody starts celebrating Dennis' birthday.
TikTok, all stop.
Here ends our story with Dracula. Thank you for watching the video. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to receive all new and comments. We will meet in a new story.
Solmeri's Movies in Minutes.